the way how Villa Badessa and Pichera's communities met each other, and the joy of being together. It's like being together with your roots, reaching the people that gave birth to you in a sense. With this, I give the word to Silvia. Yes.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Eda, for this introduction and for the invitation at this 25th FEL conference to present this work, which illustrates what I like to name a collaborative process within the search of the roots of Villa Badessa, a process that has fostered a newfound or a renewed pride of the Arbëresh identity for the community of Villa Badessa. This work, La Memoria Ridestata, Awakening Memories, is more than a mere reconstruction of the researches carried out in the last 10 years. It deals with making the community of Villa Badessa more aware, more active, and more responsible than before. It goes beyond the conservation of its identity, aiming at revitalizing the transmission and enhancement of their cultural heritage, also by reconnecting this minority with this homeland of origin. I'm very happy that this conference this morning dedicated free communication to Villa Badessa. This is a result, I believe, of this collaborative process carried out from 2010. To provide linguistic assistance if necessary, Dr. Renata De Ruggeris, current president of l'Italia Association, will help me as interpreter in English during the debate at the end of this presentation. I thank her publicly because she will remove me and you from a great embarrassment due to my linguistic malaise or linguistic discomfort. Thanks to the speeches of Silvana Nini and Domenico Di Virgilio, you are already familiar with some aspects relating to the community of Villa Badessa. Villa Badessa boasts Albanian origins starting from 1743. In the same year, a group of 73 people from the southern coast of Albania, particularly from the small village of Picheras, arrived in the Bourbon territory of Pianella, currently in the Abruzzo region in the center of Italy. They were transferred directly from Brindisi at the Bourbon Crown's expense and founded the village of Villa Badessa. Notarial documents in the state archives of Naples accurately attest the number of Albanian families at 23. 18 arrived in 1743 and another 5 in 1748. Information such as householder names, the land they received, and other details of the families are known. There are several hypotheses about this migration, some of which are the result of legends consolidated over time. Historical documents and a broader reading of the policies of the century in question led us to understand that many of the transfers from the Balkans were at the time actual repopulation actions conducted by the sovereign of the kingdom of the Italic peninsula. This way, they intended to modify the local equilibrium between the military, religious, political, and economic spheres in their favor. So it was also for the Albanians who funded Villa Badessa, hired in the body of the Royal Macedonian Regiment in the Kingdom of Naples. These soldiers and their family were granted to settle in the Pianella estate by the monarch Charles III of Bourbon. The Vulgate of Pichera's community attributes the genesis of the Albanian migration to Villa Badessa precisely due to a conflict between Picheras and the nearby Muslim village of Borsh. The invitation to settle in the Kingdom of Naples probably was also a consequent acknowledgement for the courageous action of which the Christian population of Picheras would have proven itself in the conflict with Wars, which instead fell into Turkish Ottoman hands. Although it is the most recent of the Albanian colonies of ancient settlement in Italy, nothing seems to remain the oral memory of the Badessans about a recollection of the ancient migration from the Epirot coasts. Despite its absorption within the Abruzzo region and almost complete evaporation of the Arbëresh language, the Badessan community has never detached itself from the element that more than any other allowed not to forget its own cultural identity. As Domenico Di Virgilio mentioned before, the Greek Byzantine Catholic rite of the Typicon of Constantinople is still practiced today at Villa Badessa. In the church parish dedicated to the Most Holy Virgin Odigitria, the liturgy and songs are recited in Greek. The choir, okay, this is the slide with the photo of the picture of the Church of Most Holy Odigitria. The choir, typically composed by the entire community of worshippers, men and women, is the essential element without which the rites and therefore much of the original identity of the Badessan community would probably not have remained alive today. A vital material heritage is linked to the religious rite, also a strongly identifying one, the sacred icons, some of which were brought to Villa Badessa by the same families who arrived there in 1743. Over 70 precious Byzantine icons are kept in the Church of Odigitria. The importance of these icons consists in the most authentic material expression of the Albanian origin of Villa Badessa, which, together with the traditional Badessan costume and some buildings dating back to its foundation, represents one of the few tangible pieces of evidence of the Arbëresh cultural identity. Therefore, the small church of Odigitria is the true center of gravity of the tiny Badessan community and shows relation with its roots. It is the home of the community and safeguards its religious right, which is the most profound and most resistant participatory manifestation. One fact strikes and should be underlined. The church was built even before the exiles could be comfortable homes. It should also worth mentioning that the group of Albanian families who arrived at Villa Badessa in 1743 comprised some priests, and the very fact of having saved the sacred icons, as well as having provided immediately to the construction of the church, gives the measure of the importance of the votive dimension in this community and the full significance of the rite beyond its purely religious value. The geographical isolation of Villa Badessa from other Arbëresh communities of southern Italy has contributed to an acceleration of the loss of the language, favored at the same time by the rapid absorption of the Badessan population in the surrounding dialect and Italian-speaking context. Very soon, several families not belonging to the original Albanian community gradually settled in Villa Badessa. The cohabitation and the need for integration into the local social and economic fabric led the Albanians to reduce the use of the Arbëresh language. The abandonment of the language seems to have been an ineluctable fate if one thinks of the small number of Albanian-speaking inhabitants, the necessary openness to mixed marriage, even with people of the Latin rite, and to the emigration that, starting from the beginning of the 20th century, have widely interested the people of Abruzzo in search of work and better living conditions. However, precisely the same condition of marked insularity allowed the conservation of those peculiar cultural traits that led to definition of this small community of Albanian origin, an oriental oasis, due to its uniqueness in the Abruzzo regional context. Today, this uniqueness for Villa Badessa has become the fundamental prerequisite for its very survival and the strengthening of its internal cohesion. In recent times, the Badessan community has matured the full and active awareness of the need to preserve, transmit, and valorize its own identity. The many initiatives carried out in the recent year at Villa Badessa have shown how it is possible to give impetus to a virtuous circle of actions directed at the territory, at the local community, starting from the stimulation of the desire to rediscover Albanian origins and to connect with the ancient motherland. In the last 10 years, the small village of Villa Badessa has become one of the favored laboratories for the construction of a linguistics of social development. It is not worked so much on linguistic survivals, but on its awareness and participation regarding enhancing one's cultural heritage and the possibilities of positive change that can result from it in terms of local development. It is a multidisciplinary approach which takes the form of participatory activities. The process of empowerment of individuals and work group happens by sharing their internal and external overviews and their ethno-linguistic, cultural, and memorial heritages. Now, they learn to look at themselves with new eyes and to perceive their heritage differently, giving or reattributing value, meaning, and potential. The work on memory was, in our context, an eminently collective, collaborative work which involved various associations and established a fruitful dialogue between the communities of the two shores of the Adriatic, Ficeras and Villa Badessa. It was the guardian of only a part of the history of the ancient migration, written memory in Italy and oral memory in Albania. The first significant action in this perspective has been performed in the year 2010. A journey from Villa Badessa to the southern of Albania was accomplished. The aims of this journey were to meet the population of Ficeras, to visit the places of origin of the ancient community of Villa Badessa, and to make this toponym resonate along the streets of the village to stimulate the memory of the inhabitants. This trip represented a first starting point and an encouragement to enter into the negotiation for twinning between the municipalities of Rosciano and Lukov. A second journey aimed at finding the origins at Villa Badessa through the oral memory of the migration was carried out in September 2011 to collect a significant number of testimonies. This experience has helped to open a broader windows on the reality of Villa Badessa in Ficeras and Lukov, and to stimulate mutual attention and curiosity between the two banks. In fact, in September 2011, l'Italia Association carried out some interviews with the population of Ficeras, intending to prove the memory of the ancient migration. The investigation outcomes revealed that the events of the 1743 remain of considerable importance for the Ficeras population, and they are still alive in the local memory, which has handed them down orally in legendary form. Otherwise, the Badessan community has not produced or handed down narratives and songs relating to that event. It was most likely due to the need to disperse the memory connected to the escape from Ficeras, as it was considered painful and limiting for the exiles who arrived at Villa Badessa. The collective trauma of his departure and eradication from the homeland was left behind, facing the need for integration into the new social and economic fabric of settlement. The arrival in Bourbon land represented a new beginning for the group, for which it was necessary to demonstrate merit and value. Conversely, the same trauma of the departure has instead marked the memory of the community of Piceras forever. They proved to be the keeper for preserving and passing on the story of a division and bulwark of its identity and roots. The memory of the ancient conflict with Borsch and of the escape from Piceras has been kept alive precisely by the population who could not escape and who tried to fix those terrible events in songs handed down to today, as if to invoke a future reunion with their brothers, which occurred in recent times. In September 2012, given the signing of a future twinning, a delegation from the municipality of Lukov was welcomed in Roșanu to sign preliminary agreements and a friendship pact between the two citizens. The decisive moment in excavating the memory and searching for the roots was the return journey made in June 2013. We don't know for sure how long the descendant of the settler who founded Villa Badessa maintained contact with the homeland or had the opportunity to return there. In order to reconnect the interrupted dialogue, of which there was no longer any trace in the local Badessan memory, in June 2015, a delegation of 18 people from Villa Badessa met the citizens of Piceras and Lukov on the occasion of the second part of the international conference, 7 Days of Linguistic Rights, Migration between Linguistic Disease and Cultural Heritage, which led to the cultural journey, discovering the origins of Villa Badessa on the trail of the ancient migration. This meeting was the official moment of signing a second friendship pact between the municipalities of Roșanu and Lukov, given the future twinning. However, above all, it represented the first meeting between the descendants of some of the families left from Piceras and landed at Villa Badessa in the 18th century. A meeting strongly fraught emotions and curiosity, allowed many Badessans to look for elements related to their own families. All the action carried out over the years, the 10 years, have given trust to a vast production of research, studies and publications on the history and cultural identity of Villa Badessa in Italy and Piceras in Albania. Almost to crown this long journey made by the Badessan community on the legislative front, a regional law has been recently adopted in the Abruzzo region to provide all future initiatives with the correct formal framework, specific funding and adequate legal arrangement at all levels. This setup is in conformity with rules set out in the Italian National Law 482 of 1999, containing rules for the protection of historical linguistic minorities. On July 2020, a regional bill originated in 2003 has taken up our call for amendment proposed in 2010. This bill took shape only 10 years later, thanks to the interest and tenacity of the current mayor of Roșanu, Simone Palozzo. Together with his council, he made other significant changes to the bill by promoting it to regional authorities. We are proud to share with you on July 2020, the legislative resolution for the protection of the Arbëresh linguistic minority of Villa Badessa was published. with our call for amendment proposed in 2010 on a first draft dated 2003. This tool places the attention of the Abruzzo region on economic, generational, and social sustainability linked to the Arbëresh cultural identity. Article 1 of this law states in paragraph 2 that in order to promote the safeguarding and enhancement of the historical, cultural, artistic, linguistic, religious, demo-ethno-anthropological, and liturgical heritage of the Arbëresh community, the region supports initiatives aimed at guaranteeing its conservation, the recovery, and development of cultural identity, also promoting all the initiatives for the permanence of the population in their places of origin and the deepening on the reason for their identity. This regional law, we can spot that the legislator identified two crucial aspects for the survival of the historical linguistic minority of Villa Badessa: the permanence of the community in the place of origin and the work of acquiring awareness and knowledge of its identity and historical roots. The safeguarding of linguistic cultural diversity can be economically self-sustaining and represents a new driving force for the development of this small community only through these measures, otherwise destined, in all probability, to a slow and inexorable demographic and cultural impoverishment. On the other hand, we must not neglect all possible intervention to pass on and perpetuate the memory and richness of this priceless cultural heritage. It represents a non-rival and non-exclusive common good of the Badessan community alone, but a historical heritage from Abruzzo, Italy, and Europe that has come down to us thanks to dedication and high awareness of those who have been the protagonists of this migratory history. The new regional law, therefore, constitutes a highly significant milestone in the long journey made by the Badessan community, and more widely from Rosciano, regarding the acquisition of perspective and tools capable of enhancing the historical Albanian identity of Villa Badessa, an element of utmost importance for the territory and the community. It's worth mentioning that among the outcomes of these decennial activities is that some years ago, in 2017, Villa Badessa received an institutional visit from a delegation Albanian Union following the measure of Tirana Erion Veliaj and the Albanian ambassador in Italy, Anila Bitri, event that may have never happened if that first journey wouldn't have been accomplished. Our work has shown us the narration of the before and the after of a specific historical event concerning a reunified community, no longer just a Badessan one, no more only a Picheraziot one, a community returned to being only one through the meeting and sharing of a common feeling, the search for roots and the need for memory. The migration that had split it saved with the landing on new land part of its treasures linked to tangible and intangible heritage. The diaspora has completed a cycle. Cultural germination was born from the shed blood, Jacuione Sprisciur, just as the word diaspora suggests, enclosing the two complementary meanings of dispersion and dissemination. To save, preserve, disseminate, transmit, perpetuate is also the destiny of migrations. Migration is therefore a reservoir of memory. In our case, this memory was built at Picheras and reconstructed at Villa Badessa, built by mythologizing events and its transmission, employing songs and stories, and on the other side, reconstructed at Villa Badessa through the support of written sources. In both cases, we are witnessing a need to the reappropriate memory, collective and individual or familial. This awakened memory reaches a patrimonial element, placing itself not only as a tool for reading the past, but above all, as a basic knowledge from which to launch the actions of valorization of the Badessan community and Pichera-Seot community, and the feasible exchange relationships between them. Furthermore, the shared memory is considered a common good, not exclusive only to its custodians. This asset offers itself to the present and the future as a foundation for building paths of different nature. Nevertheless, shared memory can open up to a new way of reading the potential the cultural diversity can express for the territory. We have also proposed the creation of a linguistic, cultural, or religious tourism and exchanges between Villa Badessa and Picheras, or between Villa Badessa and the other communities of Albanian origin settled in Italy. However, for these and other parts to be feasible, it is necessary to keep the memory alive. We believe it is necessary to ask some questions that primarily affect the choir future, and therefore the Byzantine Greek Catholic liturgic rite. The choir has undergone various transformations over time, depending on the succession of different parish priests, sometimes not coming from the Greek liturgical tradition. These changes have affected in some phases, indeed, the repertoire, but also the composition of the choir. We passed from a choir that almost disappeared in the early 2000s to its renewed constitution in recent time, and from an almost exclusively female presence in the early years of its rebirth to a rediscovered male presence.
3 more minutes.
Okay, I go to the conclusions. What seems important to us to note in the light of the illustrated path is that the choir is now also made up of members who are not descendants of the original Albanian community, a sign of an increased perception of the centrality of the choir for the very existence of the Arbëresh Badessan community. The presence of a cultural association, the Cultural Association Villa Badessa, gathers almost every inhabitant of the small village. This small community appears united and lively during the many occasions of celebration and cultural animation. However, despite the liveliness appearance, the Odigitria Church, the Odigitria Church choir seems destined to impoverish with the aging of the population. Being able to bring young people closer in the choir and therefore ensure the transmission of the repertoire of liturgical songs to future generations becomes an urgent need for Villa Badessa to cope with, also accepting the challenge of opening up more to the outside world. Like the choir, the treasure of the sacred icons in town needs a community that perpetuates their presence, care, and enhancement in this territory, in defense of historical memory, and above all, as evidence of the richness that can derive from cultural contamination and positive examples of welcome, coexistence, and resilience. The further documentation and research actions on the historical and cultural heritage of Villa Badessa are still many to do, as there is still a lot to look for and deepen. Nevertheless, much more is what the Badessan community can actively do to get out of a purely conservative condition of its past and move towards the creation of new possible scenarios. In synergy and collaboration with public bodies, the academic world, cultural, artistic, and economic operators of the territory, and supported by indispensable planning, Villa Badessa has shown in recent years that it knows how to do and can do advancing in small but concrete steps. Thank you.